It is generally accepted that we are in the future. However, if modern devices fell into the hands of school children, they would impress the best engineers of those times. This happened only about 50 years ago, but history is a merciless thing, and some ancient inventions can compare with modern devices in their originality. In the next few minutes, we will prove that everything that happens around us is not a revolution, but only an evolution based on millennial achievements. Computers that are superior to steam engines and even flamethrowers await you, with which we will conduct interesting experiments. Stay tuned, because every time we talk about antiquity, we subconsciously imagine Greece, or at least Rome. We will try to be original and start from the East. Let's think about paper and even pasta. All this was invented by the bright minds of China. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Take a look at this handsome manual. What do you think is in front of you? You don't have the slightest idea. This is a seismograph that is almost 2,000 years old. Yes, the very thing that determines the strength of earthquakes and their direction. As it turns out, this does not require high-pressure equipment. Inside this beautiful mechanism, invented by Janking, there are levers and a hefty pendulum, directed in all directions of the world. Under each pendulum is a frog. But these are not just fashion figures, they carry a payload during an earthquake. When the pendulum moves, numerous levers launch a ball that falls out of the dragon's mouth into one of the frogs. It was in this simple way that the Chinese determined the direction of the epicenter of the earthquake in order to send help if it was needed. And for a second, Western civilization invented an analog after only 1,500 years. However, it's not to be assumed that they were idle. While the same Greeks, a couple of centuries before the invention of the Chinese seismograph, crafted a whole computer, it is better known as the Antikythera mechanism, named after the island near which its remains were found through gears and pure mechanics. The mechanism allowed for tracking the dates of 42 astronomical events. It simulated the positions of the Sun, the Moon, and the 5 known planets at that time: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Moreover, it accurately predicted lunar eclipses. Hence, the ancient Greeks could easily determine the current day in the lunar cycle and perform any calendar calculations. There is no need to elaborate on how convenient this device was. It was used to set the dates of the Olympic Games, and astronomers studied distant planets. Remarkably, it was discovered in the early 20th century, and scientists recognized its nearly faultless indications. At that time, the device was more advanced than some contemporary astrolabes. That's progress for you, my friends. Currently, anyone can assemble a similar mechanism. 9 years ago, an Apple engineer named Andrew Carroll built an analog version using Lego bricks, and you can find the schematics online. It's no secret that war has always been a driver of technology. Soviet and American space programs were developed solely because the military was interested in deadly missiles. The brightest minds in history often applied their intelligence to inventing weapons. Take Archimedes, for example, who lived in the 3rd century BC. The guy discovered laws that physicists, mathematicians, and engineers still rely on today. But he also invented, by God, a real cannon. The secret is simple regular metal tube, which was filled with water from one end and placed in something extremely hot. The water would instantly turn into steam, and if a projectile was loaded into the cannon, the steam would propel it outward. Legends say that during the First Punic War, the cannon of Archimedes was used to defend Syracuse. However, in our time it has become the subject of engineering disputes. On the one hand, the popular program Mythbusters could not create a working analog of this gun, but a team from Menn University was able to do it. In addition, it should be noted that the blueprints and cannons come from Leonardo da Vinci, so the existence of the cannon is doubtful, especially considering that already 2 centuries before it, in the 4th century BC, blueprints and flamethrowers were successfully used during the Lower. Yes, It should also be mentioned that real flamethrowers that shoot coals and sulfur were invented in antiquity. The Greco-Roman era also saw many peaceful inventions, such as pewter pipes that were used to supply water, and the odometer, which was used to measure distance. If we move to our era, namely the beginning of the 1st century of our era, then we are standing in the center of Rome, and we want to go to battle in the Colosseum. It may come as a shock to some to learn that the taxi is not a modern invention. Everyone, without exception, will be surprised to learn that already 2,000 years ago, Roman taxi drivers used taximeters to accurately charge for the kilometers traveled. How they did it without satellite navigation is a mystery. The odometer, a device for measuring the number of revolutions of a wheel, was familiar to the ancient Greeks. Thanks to him, the Romans knew exactly how far from home they were. It is interesting that the modern calculations of the campaigns of Alexander the Great differ from the ancient ones by only 0.5%. Taxi drivers use the same technology. There was a special tooth on the wheel that clicked in a different way. After a full revolution of the tooth, the taxi driver determined the required number of turns and marked it on a special scale. Then a special pebble fell into a special bag. After the trip was over, the taxi driver counted the pebbles and announced the final price. This is an example of an amazing mechanism, which is analogous to vending machines. Even in the 1st century, Monsieur Heron of Alexandria described machines for sale that sold holy water in front of the temple. People could toss a coin onto a balanced rocker that would open a valve to let in a certain amount of water for a certain amount of time. This is not the last invention of Heron. He also described the simplest steam engine, which was a rotating steam prodigy. Thanks to this invention, in 1698, Thomas Sever received a patent, and the Industrial Revolution began throughout the Western world. This shows that ancient ideas inspire modern technology, and many inventions were created in antiquity. Technology evolves, not revolutionizes, and many ideas from antiquity still remain intact. Therefore, the story is important, and we hope that our video implements this concept in a worthy way to deserve your subscription and like. We invite you to stay with us, because we have many more interesting videos ahead.